Hi, everyone. I'm going to introduce our first speaker. I'm Tracy from Jewish Senior Life. Thank you for your patience as we figured out technical difficulties. We're happy to have you in our session today regarding senior care and difficult conversations. We're going to get started. And thank you for letting me know, Dave Scott, that we're on and ready to go. I'm going to introduce Karen Gales, one of our social workers and resident service coordinators at Mir Apartments, which is part of Jewish Senior Life of Metropolitan Detroit. And then I'll be back to see you shortly to wrap up the end of our talk. Thanks again for coming.
Hi, everybody. My name is Karen. As Tracy mentioned, I am a social worker here at Jewish Senior Life. Particularly at Mir Apartments. It's hard for me to know. I'm trying to just get an idea as I look at this screen to see if I can see how many people are in the session and who is in the session. Something that might be helpful, if you have the ability to write in the chat box, what brings you to today's session? That allows me to make sure that I understand who is here and your interest. If you don't write back, then I'll just continue to speak broadly. But it might be helpful to know if you are interested, if you came to this fair because you're interested in getting some information for yourself, about yourself, or if it's to get some information and resources for a loved one. So I'm just going to give it maybe, I don't know, about 60 seconds just to see if anybody responds to that question. And if not, then I'm just going to speak broadly. So as I wait this minute out, I'll just tell you a little bit about what the general topic of conversation is going to be today, which is going to be how do you know when it's time for either you or your loved one to just get more help? In the industry of older adult healthcare, we typically call it care. When do you need more care? And sometimes it's hard to know, but I'm going to give you some rough ideas of ways to help figure that out. Okay, so it doesn't look like anybody's responding to that question, and either you just don't feel like it or you don't have the technical capability of doing it for whatever reason, and that's okay. So I'm just going to speak. And Dave, if you're still on this call, it looks like you know how to respond here. Is it possible for you to just type in and say like a thumbs up? I can hear you. It's going live. It's fine. But until then, I'm just going to keep talking. So the purpose of this chat is to figure out how and when to decide if you or your loved one needs more help. So one of the ways that I often encourage people to think about this topic is it's such a very large topic. I don't know, do I need more help? I don't know, does my mom need more help? She's resistant to getting more help. I don't know if I do. And so I think that the best place to start is to break this very big topic down into a much smaller bite-sized concept. And it's to ask the question, which activities of daily living do I need help with? Or does my loved one need help with? Activities of daily living is a term that's used in healthcare. But it's basically the most basic activities that human beings do in a given day or week. And so some basics are getting in and out of bed. Oftentimes it's called transferring, or getting up and then where are you going? And so sometimes the dealing with things like going to the toilet, getting on and off of the toilet, or in and out of the shower, things related to medication. And so one of the challenges with medication that you or a loved one might be facing is how I'm gonna instead of keep going back and forth, I'm going to use the words loved one, with just a general assumption that you're here for, maybe for a loved one, but you could certainly be here for yourself and apply it to yourself. If you if your loved one has difficulty managing their medicine, for instance, maybe they forget to fill their meds and they get up maybe to the last pill and they get themselves into quite a bind and the family is running around trying to help them, or you somehow found out that the person that you care about is absolutely out of their meds already and they've been out of them for a few days, that's an activity of daily living that you might want to take a look at. Some other ones, some huge ones, have to do with falls. Has your loved one fallen recently? One of the ways that I take a look at falls as it relates to needing more help is falling is not uncommon, and a fall can even happen for someone who is completely healthy and in their 20s. One isolated fall is just that. It's one isolated fall. And I'd be curious to know the details on why it happened. But a second fall becomes maybe a coincidence, and a third fall becomes absolutely a pattern. And we want to take a look at falls and fall patterns and how often are falls happening and when are they happening, so that we can take a look at how and when does your loved one need more help. When the falls happen is really important, and to take note of that. Other activities of daily living have to do with eating, meal preparation. So if your loved one may not have difficulty actually literally feeding themselves, that's not a problem, but they have difficulty managing their groceries, getting groceries, managing the groceries in the refrigerator, or like for instance, is there old expired stuff? Is there not enough food in the refrigerator because they are just not thinking about it properly in terms of how much food do I need, like based on what's left in the fridge, when will I need to go shopping again? And do they get themselves down to like, 2 eggs and a gallon of half a gallon of orange juice? Transitions and mobility are also very important, and whether your loved one is able to effectively get around, whether it's getting in and out of a car, just moving about in their home, wherever their home is. So these are just to give you a few ideas about activities of daily living. They're the most basic things that we need to do in order to function on a daily basis, okay? Once you kind of determine which of those activities are a challenge, the next place to start is not to just say, we need a caregiver, end of story, and then just call up a caregiving agency or get the name from a friend of a friend, and then call that person and say, are you available? When can you start? They're going to want to know which activities of daily living does your loved one need help with, and they're going to want to know how many hours. A lot of people just say, well, let's start with like 2, 3, 4 hours to start. And why don't you come in on like Monday, Wednesday, Friday? Mornings sound best. That usually will work best for me. Rather than thinking about it in a way that I encourage, which is to go back to those activities of daily living and to make a list of which ones are a challenge and what time of day do those challenges occur. What time of day do those challenges occur? Once you determine that, then, and I would suggest doing that prior to actually contacting a caregiver or an agency. What time do they occur? And what are they? And then based on that, go from there. So if your loved one has a problem taking their medicine, hiring a caregiver for just a few hours in the morning may actually not solve the problem. It may solve the problem for the morning dose, but it may not solve the problem for the afternoon, evening, or bedtime dose. And so it can get quite costly. And so it's important to think about figuring out how many hours you or your loved one need help for, which activities you need help for, and then and then determine what that cost will be. And some people, for them, cost is not an issue and they can afford to hire a caregiver until the day that they pass away. Other people, money is quite tight and they do not have unlimited funds, and they need to think about whether or not they can afford to hire somebody 4 hours a day, 7 days a week, or 8 or 16 hours a day, whatever it comes to. And at some point, you might want to think about whether or not the cost of that is beginning to exceed moving into, say, like a senior living apartment, where some of those needs and activities of daily living may be met. And some of them can be met at an independent living like Mirror, where we do serve 5 dinners a week. We have people who do various checks. We have alarm systems in place if a resident falls. And then you could also look at assisted living if more care is needed from there. Other than that, there certainly is a lot more to say on this topic. I hope it's brief, but I hope it was helpful to just think about starting with which activities of daily living does my loved one need help with, and then what time of day do those activities occur. If that's all that you take from this session with me speaking, I hope that's what you do. From here, I want to just briefly give you my telephone number so you can reach out, and then I'm going to pass this over to my colleague. My name is Karen Gales, Gales. My telephone number is area code 248-592-1139. Thanks so much for your time. Tracy Perkovnik is coming back, and she's going to speak to you about having difficult conversations. Thanks.
Hi again, everybody. So again, my name is Tracy Perkovnik. I'm the Director of Residential Marketing and Community Relations here at Jewish Senior Life, and I'm also a social worker. So one of the things I do here is talk to families and older adults about difficult conversations, mostly in regard to moving, but it starts before the moving process. There's usually topics that have to come up before we even get to, well, maybe it's time to talk about moving. So I guess my disclaimer is that there's no magic wand to this. This is hard on many levels for many reasons. And if I had the magic answer, I would give it to you. But I'm hoping some of the tips that I can offer will be helpful. Because, when we talk about, the elephant in the room for me is that when perhaps as an example, being an adult child, trying to have a conversation with my parents about things changing for them, that family dynamic is so challenging because now we're talking about a role reversal, right? So now I'm the parent or acting like the parent, and the parents, they're still my parents. So how do you manage a conversation about needing more care, about not driving, about closing out your home and moving to a smaller environment, about physical limitations? How do you even have those conversations? It's much easier to say until it's your own family member. It's much easier to give advice to friends and say, just tell them that, they have to stop driving, and really this senior community is wonderful. I would love living there. But again, we're not the ones that are in their shoes. We're not the ones that are declining. We're not the ones who might be having some memory changes. We're not the ones who have to make huge decisions about the rest of my life. And quite frankly, as an older adult, they're getting toward the end of their life, and a lot of life review comes into play. So we talk about that role reversal parent-child relationship, and always keeping that on the forefront when having these conversations, because we also want to look at, well, what are the family dynamics? What was my childhood like? Did I have a great childhood? Did I have, parents who were supportive and there for me? Am I now becoming the adult child caregiver as out of responsibility? Is there resentment there? Is it something that I feel I have to do or that I want to do? And so you have to also look into yourself and say, how can I remove any resentment or difficult feelings toward my parents and kind of start fresh and say, okay, we're going to go from here. They're different people now, whether it was good or not good. And let's face it, every family has challenges over time. Nothing is ever perfect, but some have harder situations than others. And so it's hard for us to know what has always happened in a relationship in past years. So I guess the few things I just want to say about this in regard to this is start slow. Nothing is going to happen overnight. You might have gone to tours, 3 or 4 senior communities, and they are beautiful, and there's so many amenities, and they seem like palaces. However, I feel that, for me, it's great, but to your loved one, it might not be great. So start slow. Say to your parents, before things maybe get more challenging as they get older, what would you want? Do you want to stay in your home? How would you feel about having care? Because when you think about it and you break this down, and you say to your mom, you need someone to help you with your showers. I look back to myself and say to myself, would I want a stranger coming into my house, seeing me without clothes on in a shower and helping me shower? One of the most intimate things that someone can do. So again, being mindful of what the impact is of adding these changes into your loved one's life, really, really diving deep into what this means for them. And so again, sensitivity, include your loved one in these conversations so that they feel in control. Because again, as we get older, we do lose control of certain things, as we mentioned before, driving, maybe vision, hearing, all these things that, we take for granted now that we may not have full capacity of when we get older. And so you want to avoid telling them what to do. You want to include them in making plans. You don't want to make plans without them and then surprise them with it. We often talk with families that say, my mom doesn't even know I'm calling you. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with gathering information. You're actually doing a great thing. You're arming yourself with information, you're planning ahead, do the legwork behind the scenes, and that's fine. But as far as decisions being made, that's when you really want to include your loved one. And if they have cognitive impairments, then perhaps you work with them in a way where you're giving them choices. What if we did A or B, and helping them choose? And then we're going to have people that are going to say, absolutely not, I will accept nothing. And that's the tough one, because what can you do but perhaps watch a crisis occur? And sometimes until that crisis occurs, and hopefully there are many crises, there's nothing that will change. And so, like I said when I started, there's no magic wand, but it's being compassionate, it's being understanding, it's avoiding telling and making these plans without your loved one's input, because that will only divide things more. And perhaps if you have siblings, sometimes one of the siblings has a relationship that might be able to connect differently with the parent. And so maybe that sibling has the conversations, the other sibling does the legwork behind the scenes and gathers information, and you work as a team. So you also have to examine your sibling relationships, because sometimes those aren't always perfectly intact. And lastly, I want to say, and I really encourage it strongly, is you really need to get help for yourself, because this is hard. You might not be providing the direct care for your loved one, but you are on this journey with them in the last years of their life. And it's very difficult. It's very difficult to watch someone you love decline and decline care and decline services and decline your ideas that would help them live a good life. So it's a struggle, and there are support groups. Jewish Senior Life here, we have social workers in all of our communities. I often talk to families on the phone. I'm happy to speak with you about, just the situation. Maybe sometimes just venting and getting it out is the first step, and if you have some past issues with your loved one and family dynamics, and issues that haven't been resolved, sometimes it's good to speak with a therapist and kind of work through those things so that you can start fresh and be the person that your parent needs you to be at that point. So you're always welcome to contact me at Jewish Senior Life. I'm Tracy. My direct dial is 248-592-5048. We also have a booth here at Vibe. So if you click on the Jewish Senior Life link on the booth page, you'll see virtual tours of our communities here in West Bloomfield. We offer independent living, assisted living, and memory care. And it was really a pleasure to speak with you today. If anyone has any questions, you're welcome to type it in the chat. I'm happy to stay on a few more minutes if it's allowed. I know it's 10:30, but we got a little bit of a late start. And so I'm certainly open to questions or comments if anyone has anything. I know Karen gave you her email. Mine is tproghick@jslmi.org. But again, our information is also on our booth, and our website is jslmi.org.